By day, 17-year-old Kiera Johnson is an honor student, a math tutor, and one of the only Black kids at Jefferson Academy. But at home, she joins hundreds of thousands of Black gamers who duel worldwide as Nubian personas in the secret multiplayer online role-playing card game, Slay. No one knows Kiera is the game developer, not her friends, not her family, not even her boyfriend, Malcolm, who believes video games are a quote-unquote distraction to keep the Black man from becoming great. But when a teen in Kansas City is murdered over a dispute in the Slay world, news of the game reaches mainstream media and Slay is labeled a racist, exclusionist, violent hub for thugs and criminals. Can she protect her game without losing herself in the process? All right, welcome to the podcast. This week, guys, we are reviewing the book Slay by Brittney Morris. A beautiful cover. It has a lot of pinks and gold leaf, which shines when you twist the book. It's a really beautiful book. And stay tuned to the end if you would like a chance to win a copy of your own. I'm Jan, your host.
And I'm Joy, your co-host.
And we're really excited to review this book with you this week. So we're going to start off, as usual, with a rating. Joy, what would you rate this book?
I have to go with the 3 for this book. Yeah.
A 3 out of 5?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm a little surprised. I thought you would rate it higher, but I'm right along with you. I give it a 3.5 stars out of 5. So I think we are more on the same page than we have been in our last 2 episodes. This is only the 3rd, but it's still surprising.
You're close.
So, yeah.
The first book, Skin of the Sea.
Very true. There's 2-star difference, though.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to get into why we rated what we rated it. So for anyone who has not read the book so far and does not want any spoilers, you might want to skip to the end if you want a chance to get your own copy or read it and come back so that you can hear the discussion. That's your warning. Spoilers from here on out. All right, Joy. So why'd you rate this book a 3 out of 5 stars?
So it wasn't a bad book. I didn't hate it. But some of the references, some of the meanings, it was just too much hitting the nail on the head for me. And it became a little cliche. And it became, okay, yeah, like we get it. And we get it, okay? So it was just like hitting the same note constantly. So that's what kind of hit me. And then it really made me feel my full 29 years of age reading this. Because it's about like people who are younger, like who are in high school. So it was just like, I don't know, like something about the cadence of it. I just wasn't really feeling too much. Like I felt like this is a young person doing young people things and I'm not there anymore. And like the reasonings too. Like the whole time I was like, girl, if you don't leave this dude, like he sucks. I feel like she was like my very much younger sister.
Yeah, and that's what it seemed like. Maybe it's because I have a younger sister that's kind of hard-headed.
I hear some, what? That's me.
That took you way too long to catch on to what I was saying, by the way.
The hell?
But I don't like the emotional maturity definitely was like an issue for me with the main character, but I don't think I like felt super out of place. Like this is definitely a young adult novel because, and this is probably not a good sign, but I think it's pretty universal, like the discussion with Black women and Black men and the relationship between them. Because that's exactly what I was thinking with her character. Like she just gave him way too much grace, Malcolm. And that annoyed me a bunch. But it's also like, that's a narrative I'm used to hearing. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's necessarily an age thing. I think it's just a maturity thing is what I'm saying. Does that make sense?
No, I completely agree. I feel like if someone was in the same exact relationship at our big age, it's possible. But I don't know. It was just like, I wasn't feeling it too much at all.
It just seemed like a girl who was trying to figure out who she was and what she would allow. And again, I feel like you're always going to be going through that growth. If you feel like you're not growing, then that probably is a sign that you're stagnant. So, yeah, I gave her some grace, even though I felt like she gave him way too much grace. Yeah. But I will say that I do relate a lot to what you were saying about just being, like, it wasn't subtle. That is not a word that I would use to describe
No.
this book. And I will be honest with you. I thought you would rate it higher because when I was reading this book, and again, I was reading the physical copy, I did not even get through the first chapter and I put it down and I did not come back to it until 2 days later because I hated everyone.
Yeah.
Like everyone was just such a stereotype. Like it was not subtle at all. And then I started to realize that like the more I read it, and granted, I did not come back to it until you said that you were almost done and that it was good, which violates the rules of book club, by the way.
I lied. Like, finish this damn book.
I will say this, everyone that's listening. The only rule of book club that we have 2 rules, actually. The rules of book club. Don't talk about the book before book club. And there is no did not finish in this book club. You got to finish the book. So her telling me that she thought it was good was definitely a violation of book club rules.
I just wanted to motivate you to read it some more. Like, oh, just get into it. Get past those first couple of chapters.
Well, I was still in chapter 1 and I was about to violate rule number 2 because I was just exhausted. But reading further into the book, I started to realize that like the writing style that she chose was like using the characters as allegories rather than having a bunch of character development. Like the characters felt very flat, but it's because they were representing a concept that Black people deal with on the regular. Mm-hmm. Like her friend asking if she could wear dreadlocks, and then her brother, her white brother, coming up and saying, oh, let me interview her for this. I want to get your opinion for Black people. Mm-hmm. And the fact that like they said, oh, we don't want your sister's opinion. We already know what her opinion is, but they were just looking for her to give an opposite opinion so that they'd be allowed to do it. Yeah. Like all exhausting, all so exhausting. And I just had to put it down. And then of course, Malcolm coming up and being the hotep that he was, I was just like, I can't take it right now. Yeah. And I put the book down because again, I deal with that every day. And I think about how like Black people as a whole don't have the option to not talk about race. We just don't have that option, whereas white people do. And it was very interesting to me because I was reading reviews on the book and all the white reviews that I saw was talking about how exhausted they were about talking about race in the book. And they said it like, she did such great writing. Like you felt exhausted with Kiera. And I was like, I didn't even need the writing for that. Like as soon as I read the first chapter, I was like, oh, yeah. Like I feel that all the time. So I don't know. On a certain side, I think maybe she did do really good writing for people who aren't Black to understand what Kiera is going through. Yeah. Does that make sense?
No, yeah, that's exactly what it was. And the thing for me, and normally I don't read books like this that's like very close to like home or very realistic to your everyday life, because I want to read books for escapism usually. And so for me to read a book about the reality that I live, I'm just like, not only am I exhausted, but I'm not escaping into any kind of fantasy. I'm not escaping to a different world. You know what I mean? Like, and that's why I don't really read like historical fictions either. I'm just like, I know this, like, it's very traumatic for Black people and I don't want to be traumatized further, you know? So I don't care for books. I usually do stuff like this. It's not for me. Not saying it wasn't a good book for someone, but it just wasn't for me personally.
You rated it a 3 out of 5 for a reason, though. Yeah. Like it wasn't something. It's like an average. So what did you like about the book?
So I would give this book to like my 12-year-old friend's daughter to read. Like it's not a bad book. I just think that my age and like where I am right now in my life, I don't need it. You know what I mean?
So you didn't. Like, even the, like, chapters where they skipped around to the professor at MIT talking about how he was going to, like, or realizing the game was about Black culture and wanted to share that with his nephews, or Maurice talking about his trips to Asia, because we all want to travel, right? That's relatable, just going around and worrying about how you're going to be received as a Black person, or even, like, Claire and her experience and like people assuming that she's not from France, even though she's been there her whole life. And then feeling excluded from Black culture as well because she's mixed. Like, I agree there are some things that are like again, about emotional maturity, like her relationship with Malcolm. But I feel like there was some things in the book for everyone.
Yeah, there's some things in the books for everyone, but for me, those different snippets, especially like the one where it's like the kid that asked her to battle at one point in the middle of the night, and it was like LGBT or something, and the mom came in and beat him up or something. It was like seeing what the different perspectives of the people who were playing the game. Like, I liked it, but I'm just like, I don't need a whole book about this and to see these perspectives. It's not a bad book. I don't hate it. And I like how she did the different perspectives, but it was just like, it was a very average book.
What did you think about that? Like, having all the different characters, like, I feel like she did a good job of doing a lot of different viewpoints and saying why this safe place was important to them. Do you feel like that was legitimate? Like, having a safe place? Do you have a safe place like that anywhere? Or do you feel like, if you were to create a safe space even, like, what would you create? Would you create something similar, like a game, or will it be something else?
I think, so for me, this sounds like, okay, so the game itself sounded really cool, and I was really impressed with the game. And when I
really want to play that game.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, like, the way that I play games, I don't really care about, like, missions or battling. Like, even when we play Pokemon Go, not Pokemon Go, but, like, Pokemon on the Switch, I never actually play it to get the gym badges or anything. I just play it to get the different Pokemon that I like and just to explore. And that's how I always play video games. So when they were explaining it, and it was like, oh yeah, this is just, you can travel the world, and it's like 1-by-1 ratio of the world, and you can get like different animals and make a life out of it. Like, people don't always go in there to battle; they just go in there and be like a shopkeeper. I'm like, that's what I would do.
That seems so fun. Like, the fact that there was something for everyone. Or, like, they had the pets, the rhinos that they could ride,
and they were visiting the friends in their actual houses that they decorated. Woo! Yeah, that was really cool. So,
wasn't Claire's house that she built, like, all the yellow? So cute.
That's what I would do.
Like, I love that. Or, like, people making their own clothes. Just seemed really cool. So that's one of the questions I had, actually. What was your favorite card that you saw? I'll give you my favorite if you need some time to think about it.
Yeah, you tell me first.
So one of my favorite cards was the twist out card.
Yeah, I was going to say that one too. Okay.
So I love that one because, first of all, twist out is life. So it's like my go-to hairstyle for sure. But also, I loved how at the beginning of the battle, it started off as 2 huge twists that she said was the size of, like, dinner plates. And then as she went on, she did, like, smaller ringlets and things like that, because there's so many different ways you can do a twist out. So I really like how diverse that card was. And just in general, I love how diverse all the cards were, because they're, like, when she assumed that, what's the boy's name? The brother? Wyatt. When she assumed Wyatt was Dread, it just annoys me even saying that name right now. When she assumed it was Wyatt, she was like, he might have studied the cards and memorized them, but he doesn't know how versatile all these cards are because he doesn't understand the culture. And she was using cards that, like, in a way you wouldn't have expected to use them. So I really like that all of them had a double meaning, because I feel like African American vernacular and just our culture, you can't just decide you want to look on the outside and take something and then fully understand it. That's just not how it works, which is the danger of cultural appropriation with everyone. You assume you know how something is or what it's about, and you really don't. So yeah, that's definitely something I liked about the game in general. But all right, you had enough time. What's your favorite card? I have more favorite cards, by the way. I'm going to tell you another after you tell me yours.
So I really like the purple haze card. It would have made it follow you with the purple. And then when she explained it was between the one that it was, I can't remember what it was, but that one or Purple Rain. I was like, damn. Like, it was Prince. Yeah. That one's cool.
She was talking about she didn't know which way to name it.
And the other one was the Satchmo card. Yeah. And the only thing I could, because when he was explaining it to his nephews, like, you know who Satchmo was? Like, the Louis Armstrong? And I was like, I didn't know, honestly. I was just like, I immediately went to Rugrats when they're in the backyard and they go, there's Satchmo.
Like, what does that have to do with Black culture?
Rugrats? What? But yeah. What's your other favorite card?
So even though I'm not very religious, I love the Black Jesus card. Where she said it's pretty much everything awesome I could think to put in a card. I was like, that's freaking hilarious. It's like such an OP card in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think about it too from like a gamer's perspective in that I played Magic the Gathering. I have gone to drafts. I've played other like card games, especially, I mean, not especially, but including like Slay the Spire, I think the card game is called. I've just played a lot of them. So I'm like reading these descriptions like, oh, that would go really well with this one.
Yeah. I thought that was so interesting that she was able to write a book while also creating a game. So cool. What's your perfect game? Now write a book about it. It's really impressive. That's what I was thinking the whole time, honestly. So she wrote a whole game.
I feel that way whenever I read a fantasy novel where they did a lot of world building.
I think it's funny how no one knew who she was this whole time. Like when she said her IP address changed every few seconds and so she couldn't be traced. The way that my ego was set up though, like if I managed to write this whole successful game, everyone would know it was me. And especially got like this badass character, they call her Queen. I'm like, yes, bitch, grovel as I walk past.
But that was her escapism, though. Like, that was where she escaped to do the stuff that she wanted. And it seemed like everybody in her life would have had an issue with it because of things they would say. Like the Malcolm, obviously, and her mom, like, trying to steer them away almost from Black culture. Like, anytime they said something, it seemed like on the outside, like, people wouldn't be receptive of it. And she didn't want it to be a thing she had to struggle with. It was a way for her to escape.
I think it's very important, too, for that to be included. Because something that I'm very well aware of, especially with kids coming up nowadays, is that they won't be open with you or honest with you if you already show them your cards as their parents or as their guardians. If you happen to say some off-key stuff about the LGBT community or like literally anything, they'd be like, oh, okay, so we know that my parents aren't cool with this. So if I happen to come out or my friends happen to come out, they can't know about it. And these little things that you like tell them or just do or say around them, they'll pick that shit up and they'll carry that with them because then they know you're not a safe person to explain these things to. And it can be as amazing as having a whole video game world that you created. You wouldn't know. And that kind of broke my heart a little bit. Like, I would never want to be a parent and feel like my kid couldn't talk to me because I was trying to like obviously do better, but the way the mom was doing it too, it was weird. I don't know. Like, we've always had like different adults telling us to don't sag your pants or don't say my bad or things like that. And you just don't know how damaging it is to a relationship that you didn't realize. So I think that's like a good message also for the adults.
I agree. And that's what I mean. But while the main character like had a lot of questionable judgment because she was like a young girl, which really drove it home, the fact that she went to the lawyer with a jar of change. That really drove it home for me. Oh, yeah, she's young. Like, it still has something in this book for everybody, including parents. Like, that part at the end where her mom was crying and trying to figure out why she didn't come to her. And she very clearly laid it out. Like, this is why. These are the things that you do that you thought would help me. But in reality, you were distancing yourself from me. So, yeah. There's definitely something in the book for everyone.
Speaking of the lawyer, I had like a girl crush on the lawyer. Like the lawyer and the secretary, they're both so nice and so open to her and go, she's here for a reason, obviously. And then when she just realized, oh yeah, I played the game too, like just obviously she would know by that point. But they were just like so sweet to her, and I really appreciated that too because she's scared, she's looking for a lawyer. I don't know, it was just nice to see. Not like waving her off or just like actually listening to her.
I agree. They didn't make her feel bad for having that jar of money instead of using the card like a normal person. Like, they didn't belittle her at all. Yeah, they did right by her. I was very surprised by how professional they were because that's not a situation that you see often with Black teens.
Exactly.
It's always like, if you're not coming the way that we expect our customers to come, you're here to make trouble, and people talk down to you and people want you to just like not get in their hair. Yeah, they definitely did right by her. And I love that she waived the fee and thanked her for the game. There was no like disbelief, like you didn't create. It was just, thank you. I appreciate this.
No, yeah, exactly. I
Gave
loved
her a
it.
little bit of advice. I feel like she could have gave her a little bit more advice. Like she kind of said, this is the type of lawyer you might need. If I were her, I would have been like, let me get you the name of a lawyer you might.
I mean, but then at the
But
same
hey,
time, it's just
that
like,
might have been a boundary.
it might have been a boundary, but also it's just like this young girl is coming in here with a jar full of coins. There's no way she could afford a lawyer anyway, if that was the case. So it's just, it kind of sucks.
She said, though, you might need this for your next lawyer. That doesn't mean like there wasn't another civil rights lawyer that had the same fee.
True.
Like maybe she knew some names, or she could even say, hey, this might be a bigger deal than you think. Like I would suggest you like get your parents involved. Something other than, sorry, I can't help you, but keep the money. Not to say she was wrong. I'm just saying what I would have did in that situation. But then again, I am very overprotective.
Yeah, I think it's
yeah.
I think it's interesting because she's obviously so very smart, being able to write a game, code a game. She's a math tutor and all that. But it was one of those things. It's like, how did you overlook that she wasn't a civil rights lawyer? And it just reminds you that even though you're smart, you're not smart in everything. You didn't think, oh yeah,
exactly.
No, I forgot to look that part up. Yeah.
And that's another thing I picked up, like why I gave her more grace. The girl obviously had some like issues going on. Like she was so neurotic about her shoes, and I feel like that was definitely like a lot of anxiety. Like they went into more details about her cleaning her shoes than the entire fallout of what happened after she was outed. Even though that's what she was worried about the whole book.
Yeah, I didn't go deeper detail into what happened after with her picture on Instagram and like how was it at school and like who approached her, you know? It just said she stayed home for a week from school or something like that, and that was it. And then everything was fine. It was weird.
Yeah. Which is one of the reasons why I didn't give this book like higher marks. Not a major reason, but the fact that she was worried about this the entire book, like getting sued and having her name come out there. And then once it was done, it was like not a huge deal, which was weird to me. But let's get into the real reason why I did not give this book higher marks. And that is because of Malcolm, how much he irritated me and some of the twists that his character development had taken. So let's get the Malcolm character situation out into the open. Like he was an annoyance to me from the beginning. And I'll go into why, but I'm curious because I might be a little long-winded. Did he annoy you from the beginning, or I assume that he annoyed you?
Absolutely. Absolutely he did.
That's just an assumption, but like, what are your feelings about
I'd
it?
much rather deal with last week's Drew Nichols than I would with Malcolm.
But you did rate this book higher.
I did. I don't know. It was just like the way not only he was like so belittling to her, and then like the way he spoke to her, and then she was just like, it just annoyed me all around. Like it seemed very toxic, almost abusive a little bit. It was just like
Definitely abusive.
It was just like I didn't care for it. I didn't like it at all. And I felt like her parents knew this guy, you know, and they even said that they knew they'd rather have sex in their house. You know what I mean? It's just like, so they obviously knew who he was, how he is. They were together for a long time. Why didn't the parents ever say anything about that? You know what I mean? I don't get it. I don't get it.
It's interesting, the dynamic. Like, a lot of the time when she was talking about her upbringing, I'm like, yeah, I know what that's like. Like you said, we weren't allowed to say my bad growing up. Like, she couldn't say ain't. So a lot of it was like, yeah, relatable. Growing up in a black household. But the whole thing she talked about with, like, her parents being okay with them having sex in the house, like, what?
Yeah.
That don't sound familiar. Yeah. That sounds crazy, especially since they didn't realize how controlling he was. He was very controlling. Yeah. And there were so many times where he said something so off color to her. Like when she said that she felt sick and ran off. And the only thing he screamed was, "You better not be pregnant." What? What'd you say? Right. That would have been a fight in itself. And she said, "Oh, I can't believe he would say something like that. I'll talk to him about it later," and then never talked about it.
Yeah.
Or what's the other thing? I better not
Be
hear
playing
that you
that
play
game.
this shit.
Right. You better not be playing that shit.
Talk all these better nots.
And then she even
Like, what are you
said,
talking
or
about?
what? And then she never brought it up again. And I was like, that's right, you say, or what? But then you gotta tell him that, girl.
Follow through.
Or like when she was like, he said something to her and she's like, I'm not gonna talk to him for the rest of the weekend or whatever like that. And then she did anyway.
Mm-hmm. Because he said sorry.
Yeah.
Like, he was obviously, okay, there's so many things to go into here. And he was obviously unstable, is what I'll say. Because he would, like, even to her friend, where he was like, F you then. And then 2 hours later was like, oh, I'm sorry. Can you give me some more information? The fact that she saw that he was texting her friend like that, and then her reaction was to go and appease him rather than to confront him. Like, why would you ever reach out to my friend and talk to her like this?
Yeah.
Like, that's a clear boundary for me. Don't you ever in your life. But she was still trying to calm him down, which is crazy to me.
What was this? Because she kept checking him every time.
Steph.
She was like, I hate him.
When she said she brought that coffee over, it was like threatening. You better not. Yeah, that sounds right.
What was that one TikTok? I was like, ah! All right. That was her the whole book. It was so funny. I loved her.
I would say Steph annoyed me too, though.
I love Steph. I was like, this was Steph. She cracked me up. She was like the golden ray of this book for me.
Okay, that's your favorite character.
Yeah.
Safe to say Malcolm is your least favorite.
No. Actually, I really didn't like him, but my least favorite was probably Wyatt. He was fucking annoying, like, the whole time. Like, why are you here?
He was so annoying. And that's perfectly fair, because I feel like I didn't like Wyatt a little bit more than I didn't like Malcolm, because I could tell Malcolm was going through things, whereas Wyatt just seemed like a brat.
Yeah, and even with Wyatt, too. Like, at least with Malcolm, I'm like, okay, he's a hotep. Like, I know what to expect from this. But with Wyatt, obviously, I was just like, he just kept getting worse and worse. And for it to be your best friend's brother, I'm just like, what are you doing? And that for them to be best friends for so long, and they treated her like that all the time? Like, how? I didn't like that at all.
Let's break Wyatt down, because he did get progressively worse. First is that when we first introduced him, he was being pushy and saying he wanted to get the real opinion for his interview, but he didn't want to interview Steph, because he was definitely looking for someone he could bully, is what I got from that.
That he could bully, and that he also knew was just like, if we're going to get a different answer from you than from Steph, or something I can twist to say that it's okay.
So yeah, someone he could push, so the answer that he wanted, it seemed like, is what he was looking for. Steph was sitting right there saying, I want to be interviewed, but it wasn't the opinion that he wanted.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a huge thing with, like, white culture right now, is they feel like if they want to do something, instead of listening to the majority of black people, they're going to pick out their one black friend who said the opposite, which is something that she went into in this book as well.
Yeah.
That kind of drives me crazy. So there was that. The fact that he showed up at her house to do this interview, even though she, like, made it clear she did not want to do it, and then went off about how the game was racist. And even though they're, like, explaining why, like, they feel like it's not racist, he, like, pretty much said, I don't care about any of that. This is what I think. Like, to the point where Steph, who was very outspoken, was like, let me give you a moment, because I can tell that you're not interested in listening. Let's go get a snack.
Right. After she told him, though, it's not racist. We all need our own spaces. And this is why. Like, she had a whole essay for him ready to go.
And instead of listening and, like, thinking critically about it, he just got loud.
Tracks. And that's another reason I just like Stephanie. She was there constantly for her sister. Like, she took the parents out of the house during the competition. She knew, like, when she found out about her sister writing the game, she was like, oh, all right. Like, she was just there all the time and just so excited. But I knew I would like her from, like, the beginning, because I think it was the first night when they were having dinner with the family. And then they went upstairs and they were getting ready for bed or whatever. And she was just talking, like Stephanie was talking, and Key was on her head, just like thinking about stuff. And she goes, oh, I wasn't listening. Let me ask her what she said. And she was like, I don't know, I forgot. I
was just talking, girl.
like that too.
I don't know what I was talking about. Anyway.
I don't know.
Yeah. She was definitely relatable. And I'm not saying I didn't like her. It was just that, like, she was pushy on a lot of things where I felt like she could have stopped and listened. Like, she was just too outspoken in some cases. I'm not saying she didn't have a valid opinion on everything that she said. It just also seemed like she was one to railroad Kiera a little bit. Whereas I don't feel like it's completely her fault either, because even Kiera said during the book, like, she let Steph talk for her. So it's like a dynamic they got used to and grew into. But I will also say that I feel like their whole sister dynamic was off. Like, it just seemed weird to me. And maybe it's because we have 2 other sisters and we're all very close. So, like, it got to the book part in the book where she was, like, excited and squealing in her room. And Kiera was like, be quiet. Like, Mom and Dad know we don't have enough in common for you to be happy in my room. Like, what?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
That was weird. That was super weird.
It was very weird, especially since this whole book, all they're talking about is experiences that they have in common from being the only, like, of 4 Black people in this high school. You know, like, just the Black experience gives you, like you a lot in common, let alone being sisters, growing up together, and all of these things.
It was super
weird. It just didn't. Yeah. I didn't get it, and it threw me off. I didn't actually like Kiera or Steph as the main characters. I will say that I was absolutely in love with Claire, like Cicada. Like, her online persona and her as a person, both flawless. And I feel like she wasn't perfect, but her apologizing for everything, like, as much as it annoyed me, I was like, yeah, I need to work on that too myself. Like, her knowing 4 different languages, her going to school for computers, her, like, having a very clear boundary with her father, like, just because he had issues, he felt like she shouldn't work on computers, and her standing her ground and saying, nah, like, if you can't accept me, then we're just not going to have a relationship. That was impressive to me. And I would say even her, like, her gratitude towards other people, how she kept saying, Kiera is such a strong person, or not Kiera at the time, Emerald is such a strong person, because she didn't know Kiera's real name. I was like, I don't see that.
Yeah.
I don't see what you're talking about. She does not seem like a strong person to me. But I don't know, it just seemed like she saw the best in everybody.
And
which is pretty cool.
Still, she only knew the online persona for the most part, and knew that she made this game.
It seemed like they didn't know a lot about each other's, like, personal life, but they still, it seemed like, joked around and discussed things. And maybe Emerald, Kiera, was more forceful while she was talking about the game, but man, she just seemed like everybody railroaded her in real life.
For sure. She's very much like, it came off as she's not very, like, forceful at all. And it's not a character flaw or anything. That's just, if you're more laid back and let people take over conversation, I know people like that too, and they're chill. It's just whatever.
But it seemed like she had opinions that she wasn't really sharing. Like, at the beginning, when Harper was asking her about dreadlocks, she immediately was like, oh, I don't want to say, I don't want to be the opinion on Blackness and tell you what you can or can't do. And even her mind, she was like, I don't really care. I don't think it's right, but I don't really care. I'm like, wait, what? And she was like, other people might have a different opinion. And I'm like, just tell her, like, what you think, and then tell her, I'm not the authority on all Black people.
Right.
Like, why don't you just say that? And it seemed like Harper kind of came to that on her own, but the way she came to it on her own made it seem like Kiera has never said that to her. Like, it was never mentioned before. It was just something she was thinking in her mind, which was crazy to me. You would think if this is your best friend, I have no problem telling my best friends. That's a stupid question to ask. And maybe I'm just too blunt.
Don't you ever?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I was
confused
about them being best friends too. I'm just like, has this always been the way that it was? Like, you guys are just, or is it getting worse in, like, certain, like, situations? You know what I mean? I don't know. It was a weird
even
friendship.
in reconciliation, when she was like, I don't mind talking about this stuff, but it seems like that's all we talk about lately. While I understand that, like, you can't discuss their whole history in this book, especially since that wasn't, like, the point of the book, I feel like we got no indication that their relationship was anything different.
Yeah, ever. It was weird. I would not put those two together in a room and say that they were best friends. It's weird. Yeah,
especially since it seemed like Steph and Harper had more in common since they were in that sorority together.
I would believe that they were best friends and Kiara just got tired along, honestly. You know what I mean? Like, they just know each other by association, not them being best friends.
Or even when she offered her money for a tutoring session to hang out.
Yeah.
Seemed weird. And then especially since later in the book, she was like, she's never made me feel weird offering to foot the whole bill for pizza about her money. And I was like, but she offered you money to hang out.
Yeah.
That seems weirder than saying, hey, let me get the pizza this week.
Yeah. I don't know. I never had a extremely wealthy best friend like that before either. So I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the dynamics are. It's weird.
That's fair. I feel like I'm skirting around the Hotep concept that was like the majority of this book because it's just exhausting to even think about.
It is. Can we just say he was horrible? Okay, so like I do like how the author did write it to make it seem like I didn't really believe it was Wyatt. I was like, you get into certain white forums and they all say the same shit. Like they're like parents of each other. So when he said it's a free country, I can play whatever game I want. I'm just like, he's just in some chat or some forum that said that, and maybe that other person was in there too saying the same shit. You know what I mean? And that doesn't make me think that it was Wyatt. I didn't think it was Wyatt the whole time. I thought it was just some random. So I didn't think it was Malcolm.
Did you guess that it was Malcolm?
No. I thought just Malcolm was a piece of shit on his own.
Well, she just has a lot of shitty people around her.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, I felt was honest. But I figured the morning where she said, it was like a rapid succession when she said, you're lucky Wyatt's not here today. And then she also said, like in the next paragraph, it said like, oh, I haven't seen Malcolm all morning. I was like, oh, it's Malcolm.
I didn't even think about it.
But at the same time, I was like, in my head, I still feel like that was an unbelievable plot twist for me. Yeah. And I would say Malcolm was horrible the entire time, but I don't see in real life him going in the game being a white supremacist. I would have saw him going into the game being the Hotep that he is. Like, it doesn't make sense to me that he would disguise himself as a white supremacist. What was the point of that?
Yeah, I don't get it either.
I don't get it. If anything, I feel like he would have went in there and been lecturing people about how games are wasting their mind or whatever Hotep say.
Yeah, and then
having the flower on his forehead to be a swastika and then doing blackface and even to name himself Dred Scott. Are you kidding me? Yeah. Like, so disgusting. Yeah. I just didn't see it. I didn't see it.
It was like he just lost it at the end. And then he had that whole thing on the internet to say basically just threatening her life pretty much. Your girlfriend that you've been with for years. I just don't get it.
There was a lot that I didn't get, including like how they like made an allude that Brittney Morris like alluded to the fact that he got into a fight to defend Kiara, but never really said why he was defending her or what the circumstances were. Yeah. I feel like that was weird that she never fleshed that out because the way they alluded to it seemed like they would eventually. Or the fact that all three of them went to the same school after. Was this like a recurring or still present threat at that school? Like, I don't understand the circumstances of how they ended up in Jefferson Academy, even though their main gripe the whole book was that they hate being the only black people in this school, even though he was the only one that was expelled.
Right.
I just don't know if I understand completely.
Me either. It was weird about the fight. It was weird that she and her sister went to a different school because he's going to a different school. But then your best friend and her brother's going to this school too. Like, none of it made sense when you guys were friends since you were kids, right?
And they waited until the end to explain that, oh, we were friends from something else. And then we just, like her and Harper, and then we just ended up both at Jefferson Academy. Even though they didn't explain it well, they still alluded to, oh, this is how it happened. We met at some carnival or whatever they met at, and I bought her a funnel cake. Mm-hmm. Doesn't really wrap up in a nice little bow, but at least they addressed it. I was very confused the whole book. If you moved here, how is this your best friend for life? It didn't make sense to me, and I feel like a lot was left like just vague like that, and like they explained it off in a very coincidental way. The same way she was like so concerned about lawsuits, but the only threats, like once she figured out it wasn't Wyatt, and once she figured out that like not figured out, but Malcolm said there wasn't a lawsuit, all of a sudden she wasn't worried about lawsuits. Right. These are two people that you know. How do you know there aren't other people planning on suing you? Yeah. And they addressed it at the end where someone else solved it for her. Oh, let's go under this company, and they were covered. But as far as her, it seemed like she just didn't have a concern about it at all anymore.
Especially like once your real identity was out there, I would be more concerned. Like, now they can dox me. What? It doesn't make any sense. And I feel like the whole time too, like this whole thing about the game being racist and it's being on like the news for like days and weeks, that wasn't believable to me either.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
the news cycle is very like, as soon as they can't figure out who the developer is, they're like, oh, whatever, next story.
Even with the Me Too. And then it wasn't even just like a black kid killed a white kid or anything like more sensational than it just being over a video game. I feel like it might be on Twitter.
But you also have to think, I agree that when it's about black people having their own space, it is made a bigger deal because people love to call reverse racism.
That's true, but I don't think they would bring a whole professor from MIT on to talk about it. I think Fox News might go off on it for a little while, but then that'll be it. I don't think it'll be this whole national scandal that they made it out to be.
Yeah.
Because it's basically just like if someone had the same size, if someone had like a game just like that, and only 500,000 people technically use it, but only 300,000 use it all the time, like constantly.
Right.
That's a very small amount of people, so it's just, I don't see it like being that big of a deal.
So, quick side note about it being like an international game. I appreciated that they had so many people from all over the world and it's like the whole African diaspora being represented. Mm-hmm. But it took the last battle in the game for them, it seemed, to introduce a card that wasn't about African Americans. The fufu card with the cuisine from Africa. I think she said Nigeria it was from. Like, that's the only card that I saw that represented anything other than African American culture, which is like a very small subset of the African diaspora.
Yeah. And I don't want to use certain cards that other people wouldn't know that's not like African American.
Exactly. But then it was all like African American experience, which I get because she's African American. But to say so many, I don't know a lot of cards that represent all of us. Yeah. And it has to be inclusionary. But like all the cards that we knew were very exclusionary to anyone not in the U.S. Yeah. So
honestly, generationally too, because like I said, the Satchmo card, I was like, I was like, this is, I don't know, it was weird. Her reasonings are still very much the mindset of a 17-year-old, I think.
I don't know if it was like age-based reasoning that was the issue. I think it was just like her, I don't know if it's the cards that she chose to represent. Mm-hmm. And when I say her, Brittney Morris, like maybe she had different cards in mind and just didn't bring those up because she's also like African American, so those are the cards that she felt like her readers would relate to. I don't really know, but I feel like they could have added some more cards in there that were not just based on the African American experience.
Malcolm sucks. I was kind of annoyed by him.
I still feel like I'm dancing around. What we need to do is discuss Hoteps in general, because I feel like Malcolm was not actually a character. He was a concept of this Hotep like kind of person who
very extreme
believes in only the advancement of black men, and you can't be like in the LGBT mafia. You can't be a woman. You can't be even like mixed or have different interests other than learning about like black culture and black history. And it's definitely a concept and it's like category of people. And yeah, I do feel like they're running rampant. Especially right now with this whole alpha male podcast pandemic that we're experiencing. And again, it's just so exhausting that I feel like I'm tiptoeing around it. Like I'm just so done of hearing this conversation. Yeah, we kind of have to talk about it.
No, we don't. Don't bring it to light.
There were just so many red flags where I like, and this is where I feel the most disconnect with her. There were so many things that he said that I'm like, girl, Hotep, run. Including stuff saying that he had ashy ankle. Hilarious. But there's definitely like a dynamic or like maybe a subset of African American women who are like always making an excuse for black men because they experience so much in life and they need to have a break and are old this or old that. And like we put ourselves on the back burner and just take it for the advancement of the race, even though they don't reciprocate. And again, I'm not saying all black men, but there's definitely that whole type That whole tip category, who that's what they believe, and it's tiring. It's tiring.
I think it was like that for a long time up until like recently. We just constantly fought for black men, and black men just dogged us constantly. The majority, not majority, but a good number, until there was like that one situation when the guy, he was talking about like how much he hates black women, and then he was murdered by his white girlfriend. And then people are like, why aren't you marching for him? Like, we're not going to do it. So it's one of those things where I think a lot of people are starting to realize like reciprocation is good. Like, yeah, everyone has a fucking tough, especially here. And you can't also be the harm that we're trying to get rid of in other communities harming us. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, but I also feel like there's a lot of different like annoying and exhausting like people out there in general, but I feel like the type that you're talking about, who like constantly is dogging out white or black women, is different from the hoteps, because the hoteps are always talking about how you're my queen this, queen that, black women are so beautiful, like the exact opposite of what you're talking about, but at the same time they are still standing for the patriarchy, just not white patriarchy. It's like black patriarchy.
Right, yeah.
So it's two different like people for sure. And I feel like they're both equally exhausting. But even with that, I do feel like I agree with you. There's a revelation that we're not going to put up with this anymore. But it's not. Like, it's still a lot of black women who put up with hotep behavior because it's better than the opposite, which is the type you're talking about, which is black women are inferior to any other race of women, pretty much.
Yeah. And I disagree.
Yeah. I think we all would. We all would. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot for sure. But even with that said, again, I feel like it's unbelievable that these were the only two threats of lawsuit, is the two like boys her age that she knows out of the whole international world of 300,000 players that are playing actively, 500,000 that are registered, and all of the people who saw that news segment. Like, if you're really worrying about lawsuits just because these two boys that you know aren't going to sue you, doesn't mean your fear of the lawsuit is just going away. Yeah. That was unbelievable.
And that whole thing with the password.
Unbelievable. Yeah, what about it?
Why it was like, yeah, I got a password for the game. Yeah, it's not that exclusive. Like
that was, yeah, we get it. It's easy to get a passcode. Mm-hmm. My thing is, I feel like once you get the passcode, if you're a white person going into this game and it's all about black culture, like that's what a lot of people who are like racist run away from. They be bored. I don't want to learn about anyone that's other, which is why all of these people have a issue with all the new Marvel movies that are coming out. And I can't even say all. It's like a handful, maybe 5 Marvel movies or series that's not about white men. And they say, oh, I'm done with Marvel because of this. Mm-hmm. Well, they want nothing to do with anything that's not them being the center character. So if they have a passport or not, I don't feel like they're going to stick around.
Right. So you're telling me representation does matter, right?
Right. You have 5 movies that aren't about you, and you are like livid. You will millions that we saw, and it's perfectly status quo. You should learn about us. What?
What is the issue? I know. What's not clicking, Steven?
That was another cool card I thought was a representation card, by the way. Yeah. Just FYI. I really want to play this game. It seems really cool.
I just want to play the game so I can have a shop. I'll have a flower shop.
Yeah. My favorite thing to do in games, because I'm not really a battler either, unless it's a card-based battle game, because I'm a nerd like that. But normally in games, I like to collect things. So the fact that you can collect stuff and make different cards, I collect everything. Or even make stuff, like they said that they thought the one person was collecting things and like foraging in the desert with all the sand and then selling the objects. That'd be me all day. I want to make stuff and collect things. That's all I want to do. I spent weeks on Skyrim just pickpocketing everyone that I could. Did not finish the story. Did not do any other storyline. I just forged and pickpocketed. That's all.
That's what I did in Red Dead. I didn't get past the first chapter. I just hunted because I like the way that it was like set up, and I just like lived the life.
Yeah. I didn't get very far on Red Dead.
Yeah, I didn't do much. I didn't do the story. I didn't do gameplay really. I just went on like trips to go see the giant animals. Like, you're supposed to hunt them. I'm like, I ain't hunting that shit. Then I just looked at them like left.
Yeah. That's exactly how it was for me in Skyrim. Like, anytime I saw, like, a mammoth or a giant, I was like, well, I guess I'm going to go the opposite way.
I see what I had to
I
see.
wasn't heading anywhere in particular.
I don't play games like you're supposed to, and people get so annoyed watching me play games. I'm like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. I want to go over here. Follow the story.
Yeah, nah. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm doing what I want to do.
And that's why I like Stardew Valley, The Sims. What else? Well, they're like basic, like, like it's super easy.
Okay, so I did Zelda Breath of the Wild for quite a while, but it got so hard. Like, I couldn't go to some of the areas because the enemies were too high without doing the storyline. And then I quit. Like, nah, I want to just explore the map. If you're going to make it this hard for me, I'm done.
Yeah, I tried it. I played for like maybe 30 minutes. I was like, no. This was not.
I want to go back to it eventually, but it was a pretty game. I just couldn't get into it at the moment. So.
Even with Animal Crossing, I had to stop playing it because I felt like it was too much pressure to make your island pretty. I was like, I can't live up to your standards.
See, for me, it was like the charm of the competition. Once I got a 5-star island, I was like, all right, I'm done.
Completed.
But I definitely made sure to get that 5-star island first.
I think mine is still a 4-star.
Okay, so another quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen or read Ready Player One?
I've seen the movie.
Okay, what did you think about the movie? Because there's obviously a lot of similarities.
Oh, okay. So I liked the movie because I liked how like the technology worked, how you're like on a treadmill. And that's what I was thinking too about like the gloves and the socks and stuff. Like, that's so cool. Is that like a basic thing or did you create those too? Like, I was really confused. And I was like, if you created all this stuff, how are you broke? What's going on?
Yeah, no, she did not create the gloves.
I was very confused.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But it was a free game. I was thinking that too. Like, how do you not have more money? But it was a free game, and like the couple profits that they got, I have no idea how they said they got it, but they were putting into like the game, like getting more server space and stuff. So that makes sense to me. It's crazy that they never put like any kind of ads or anything to monetize in it. But if they were trying to stay under the radar, I guess that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Still a lot to manage for two people. But I think it's interesting. I like the game Ready Player One, not the game, the movie. Mm-hmm. And I was asking Jax about it. Jax is our brother. And he was just talking about how the whole game or movie, why do I keep saying game? The whole movie seemed about gatekeeping of like geek culture. Like you can't, it seemed like you don't know about this, really? Oh, obviously, like you're a noob, or it's like giving off those vibes. Yeah. And I didn't really see it until I read this book and was like, oh, not to say that they were gatekeeping, but it's very interesting, like out of all those things in Ready Player One that like you had to get the clue to find the secret, it was all about white culture. And they didn't see that as exclusionary because we're expected to know their culture. Mm-hmm. Whereas if they were to come to this game, they wouldn't have gotten any of them, like any of the clues, any of the references. And it's just interesting how like Black culture is not really American culture.
Yeah.
Or African American culture. And I say Black, that's what I mean. Because again, most of these cards were related to African American culture and not just the African diaspora as they represented it in the book.
What?
Nothing. Do you feel like, I know we moved off the topic and I lost train of thought, but do you feel like it was out of character? I felt like it was out of character for Malcolm to go in there pretending to be a white supremacist.
Yeah, it was completely out of character. It turned from him being like regular Hotep annoying to abusive to being just like a caricature. I feel like
he was a caricature the whole time, but like for him to completely change this extreme personality and go to the opposite extreme, I don't understand that.
I don't get it. I didn't understand that at all. What was his motivation behind doing all that? And then if he were to get the game in his possession, would you just shut it down? I doubt you know how to actually run it. You know what I mean? None of it made sense. I didn't understand his motivation for it. I just feel like he would try to tell her, like once he knew it was her, that he would just be like, stop fucking playing it. Or take her like headset or something.
Yeah, you would think he'd try to be controlling with her some more, like he had been. I don't understand why he would post her picture when his whole goal up until this point was to protect her.
Yeah.
But even just the, like I said, the motivation for him, like, wanted to break up the game. I don't understand why he would go undercover as a or a white supremacist.
Yeah.
It gave me like end of Game of Thrones vibes, where like Khaleesi did a 180 and was just crazy all of a sudden. Like that's the kind of vibes it gave me.
Yeah.
That's a huge leap.
Yeah.
It's a huge leap.
I like how Stephanie called the cops on him too.
Yeah. And that's a whole discussion in itself. Should you call the police on a black person? I feel like if they do directly threaten you like that, yeah.
Absolutely.
The issue is when they're not threatening you and they're minding their own business and you take them telling you to get out of their face when you're bothering them as a threat. Yeah. That's an issue. Yeah. Leave people alone.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of black people, they put up with a lot of shit so they won't have to involve the cops until you have to. Because they don't always make things better. They usually make things worse. But that was so black and white that it was just like, look, here's the evidence. Get him away from me. And even then, I don't know if they would put him in cuffs. I think they would do like a restraining order, honestly.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. They said they arrested him just to put a restraining order on him. Like I would have just went and got a restraining order. They do like to arrest people.
Yeah.
People. Okay, final thoughts. What do you think? Did the discussion make you change your rating at all, or what other final thoughts do you have?
No, it didn't make me really change my opinion. It's just more just, I'm glad we were able to talk about it a little bit. I'm glad we were able to like work through why we had these thoughts and like how other people could read it as. I don't know. I just don't think that's another book I would go back to.
You say that with every book. I would say that it is a very exhausting book to have read. Not that it's not good writing, it's just it's so real and it's interesting because it seems so exhausting because again, each character wasn't just like one comment here or there. Mm-hmm. Like they're an allegory for like bullshit that black people have to deal with all the time. So every sentence out of their mouth was like something that exhausts you. And while I feel like people who don't experience this was helpful for them to like get into the character, it was just extra trauma and exhaustion.
Like, I did not expect this book. Okay, so it's not my cup of tea kind of book. I don't like technology. I'm bad at it. My video games are very basic that I play. And then it was just like, I thought it would be more of like a murder mystery almost, because I thought she was trying to figure out who killed this kid and why. Instead of her like, oh, someone killed this kid. Here he is. Now I got to deal with backlash, people trying to figure out who I am and all of my issues. I didn't expect that from this book at all, from the synopsis of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I can see that.
Yeah. That was my thought behind it. I was like, oh, this is not the book that I thought it was going to be.
I feel like in the synopsis, when she was talking about how no one knew she was the developer, I figured it would be her trying to keep her identity secret. But I can see how you would have thought like it was about figuring out who killed this kid, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, that didn't make much sense to me either. Just like over money. Like I over game money. Like it just never makes sense.
From what I understand though, like what is his name? Jamal. Mm-hmm. Jamal was working with two other people, his brother and the guy who killed him, and they all gave him the game money, and he was supposed to buy stuff for them to share. Mm-hmm. But before he actually bought stuff, he changed his mind and said, I'm not buying it, and if you want your coins back, you have to give me real money. Mm. That was the issue. So the guy who killed him got pissed about that and killed him. That's what happened.
That's such a huge escalation. Like, why not just report him to the mods?
Because people are crazy. Yeah.
It's crazy. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't think my rating has changed from the discussion. I still give it a 3.5 stars. Again, I thought it was a cool book. I would recommend it to people. I would definitely let them know what it is up front. Like, you are going to be a little bit exhausted if you're like tired of talking about race, like a lot of us are. And I will say too, some of the slang that they use is just a little exhausting after seeing like Gen Z try to claim all these like AAV terms as Gen Z generation like terms. That's already exhausting in itself. And then to see some of these words like used over and over again added to that. But then I did see that this book came out 3 years ago. right at the end of 2019, where some of them were still new-ish. So yeah, while a lot of the language was a little cringy, I can see it being like more relevant then. That yes card or yes card, so annoying. Like, it didn't make any sense to me. And I will say that too. Like, that was my big issue with Steph, is like they went from never talking. I don't understand why Steph didn't tell her that she was playing Slay if it was never a secret for her.
Yeah.
It was just like, you have this huge, expensive like VR set you just never told anyone about.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't you have mentioned it at least once? That was weird to me. And then the fact that like now she's flying to France to talk about the business as well. Like, how did you get in on this? Like, why are you arranging this?
She became a moderator.
She was just so pushy the whole time. Yeah, she became a moderator.
You can't dog my girls, Anne.
Okay. So yeah, I don't think there's anything else I want to say about it. I think that's all of my feelings.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, you're right though. Like, yes. Like, I was listening to the last like few minutes of it. I'm just like, stop.
The whole fight between her and her sister was just like lame and cringy to me, especially when they started like saying that long live the queens. Like, you literally you've been playing this for a couple months and now you're like one of the main mods of the game. Like, you would think she'd at least start her off anyway, it's her sister. I'm not gonna say, I'm not gonna shame nepotism.
I'm about to say, if you created a game and you're a queen in it, I'm like, Jan, come on now. At least make me a princess, please. A duchess. Countess.
Princess.
And I'm fine with that. A little bit of nepotism.
But there's no way, like, could you, like, imagine, like, 2 weeks into you finding out that I, like, did this whole game, you're arranging business meetings for us to fly to Paris and get a business deal? No, that's not something you surprise me with. That's something you talk to me about. Like, what is happening? Anyway, like I said, they're sisters. Even though they said they're not even close enough to laugh in the same room without their parents being suspicious. Whatever.
Weird, right? Although they hung out with each other at school all the time. That just didn't make sense to me. I don't know.
It didn't. Yeah, like I said, I don't know. But we're really interested to hear what you all listening think about this book. If you agree, if you disagree with anything that we said. So if you're stayed long enough to hear about how you can reach or get a copy of this book sent to you, we will be having a drawing. All you have to do is go and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this podcast. Give us a book recommendation for something that you think we should read in our book club. And we'll pick a winner from everyone who left a review.
That's right.
Anything I left out, Joy?
No. Let's hear next week's synopsis.
All right. So next week, we will be reading our first book of October. So we're going to be doing a horror / thriller / mystery theme. Our first book that we're going to be reading and reviewing is called Ace of Spades. And I'm going to butcher this name, but it's by Farida Abike Lemide? I'm not sure, but I will figure that out before we review the book. All right, so here's the synopsis. Welcome to Nivea's private academy, where money paves the hallways and the students are never less than perfect. Until now. Because anonymous texter Aces is bringing 2 students' dark secrets to light. Talented musician Devin buries himself in rehearsals, but he can't escape the spotlight when his private photos go public. Head girl Chiamaka isn't afraid to get what she wants, but soon everyone will know the price she has paid for power. Someone is out to get them both, someone who holds all the aces, and they're planning much more than a high school game. So, that is also a young adult, but kind of mystery genre that we'll be reading next week. It sounds exciting. It's very interesting that we picked another young adult novel that has to do with a rich kind of academy.
I think it's interesting
Right.
that like all these high schoolers have these crazy like experiences. Like, I just remember throwing on a sweatshirt and going to school, and going home, going to sleep.
Right.
Like,
Reading my Harry Potter books, pretty much.
you can imagine like being a background character in like any of these movies or shows or anything. What are y'all doing now?
Right.
What are you doing?
It's pretty, oh, for real? That's crazy. Anyway, so I was at home getting some cereal and we were out of milk. Can you believe that?
This is the third time this week I locked myself out of the house and my mom is going to kill me.
Yesterday, I forgot to put the laundry in the dryer and man, was my mom pissed.
Listen, do you have the horror from last night? I just went to sleep. A nap turned into like bedtime. Like, I don't...
Exactly. I don't know. Maybe it's something that we probably shouldn't be at the other extreme, but whatever. That's what life was. So anyway, let's wrap it up for this week. Joy, do you want to let them know where they can leave comments, let us know what they think, or just reach us?
Yeah, in the comment section. No, I was kidding. You can find us at Blk Girl Reads podcast on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. The black is spelled BLK because that's how the cool kids do it. Jan?
YouTube as well. All right, that wraps it up for the week. We can't wait to see you next week.
Bye.